Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being a show where we talk about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of The Crossing. A great episode with a lot of interesting developments in it. First of all, let's focus on kind of like the biggest plot point in this episode, and that is the the first mind graders. They popped up 10 years ago. It seems like that wasn't necessarily the mark they were aiming for, but I guess it was like close enough for them. It's kind of sad because obviously going to talk about it, but it ties into Marshall's story because his mom died in a car accident caused by them. It is a situation of you're trying to save the future, but you inadvertently cut one life short. I mean, it's interesting because that life is connected to Hannah in some shape or form. Like I said, it has to be like Marshall has to be like her grandfather or something. So he might play some key role in all of this, and they didn't realize it at the time, but they almost potentially could have put their own future in jeopardy. Because who's to say what Marshall's life would have been like if his mom didn't die, and basically it put his dad in a situation where it's like, oh no, your dad was drunk. He's made excuses over the past 10 years, but it's like, oh, he was drunk, he lost control, and it wasn't his fault. He wasn't trying to hurt someone, but he did. He ended up killing her mom. So that's something that Marshall's kind of had to deal with, as well as his dad. So, but nevertheless, it kind of shows kind of who they are too. So basically, they took this time to systematically introduce themselves into our society, essentially, to play these different roles that they've kind of set up ahead of time. Even like in Lindauer's case, he went out of his way using future knowledge to let a senator, like save a senator's life about an attack he knew was going to happen. And so he got himself in the position that he's currently in today. So basically, it seems like the ultimate plan was, in fact, to stop Apex, and the best way to do that is to wipe out all these people who had clear ties to it, whether they had direct connection to the invention of Apex or maybe like some association with it in a close sense. So they were all systematically wiped out. It was like 27, 28 people. And they all thought, hey, like now that that's done, because one thing I would think would happen potentially, but maybe not. It depends on the timeline rules and stuff like that. Is if your future was saved, if it didn't go out, still play out the same way it did, when you all fade from existence. It's kind of because it was like, oh, how do we know? But maybe it's one of those situations of no. It's just kind of like. Because it seems like, because the fact is, things played out, because that's what I thought as much. Like, the fact is that the second migration happened means that these are people who still came from the same timeline, meaning that things didn't change, even after all they did. Because they finished their mission in 2016, so they thought, like, hey, we'll just live our lives. But it turns out, nope. 2 years later, the next migration happened. So it's like everything they did was ultimately for nothing. Because for them, it's like all this time, for one, it's all they left behind, all the people they care about they left behind, all the people they've had to kill to do what they've had to do in this particular time. It's like, okay, all this blood spill, it's sad, but hey, ultimately this is all for the sake of the human race at the beginning, for the future. But it's like, well, now it's like, well, that was all for nothing then, you know? And what I really thought was kind of interesting, and sadly, it does seem like Emma is dead, which sucks so much because it's like, yep, it's like I was kind of hoping maybe on some level they had her stashed away somewhere, but it's like, no, Emma's dead, which sucks so much, dude. Because it seemed like this whole second migration thing wasn't part of the plan. Because apparently when they went through, it was probably supposed to be a one-time deal. No one else was supposed to follow through. Like I said, I get the implications about why they could be such an issue. It's kind of brought up again of like, well, the fact is they could expose everything. Which obviously Lindauer was kind of like, well, I can make it still seem like they're just crazy people or something like that. But also them being there jeopardizes everything because they could ultimately interfere with what they're trying to create. I kind of went to a different route because I was like, oh, maybe the fact of the matter is that they're actually trying to help Apex. No, it's like, no, they are trying to wipe out Apex. Because I was thinking like, maybe they're actually trying to benefit from it in some shape or form and be in control of it. But it's like, no, they are trying to, in fact, wipe it out. Which ultimately leads to what Eve's saying at the very end. Basically, she wants to track down the Apex, in this case, it's Reese, and use her DNA to kind of find out what particular sequences exist there so that they can wipe out anyone that has those markers. So I guess because, like I said, it's one of those situations where I wasn't 100% sure about the whole Apex situation, but I guess it is an evolutionary thing. So these particular genes in these certain markers exist within a lot of people, and they were passed down into generations and enhanced into what is now Apexes. For what purposes? I don't know whether it's Like I feel like I'm blanking, but didn't they tell us at one point in time why the apexes came to be? I don't remember. It seemed like it was most likely like a military type of thing that kind of went out of control and spawned a new species. I mean, they are stronger, faster, and more capable than humans, so it's kind of hard to kind of combat something like that, which is like human plus, you know? So, but it seems like Eve's plan is to wipe out anyone with those markers. But even Lindauer is like, you realize how many people that is. To make sure that apexes don't exist, they're willing to kill a lot of people. It's one of those things of, do the ends justify the means? Like, we have to do whatever it takes because we know what apexes we're going to do in the future. But at the same time, it's like, you don't know what that like for them, it's like, we didn't swing hard enough. It's kind of Eve's stall. So it's like, we're swinging even harder, but it's like, you don't know what that would do in the scales of time. Like, yeah, you're thinking you're making things better, but for all you know, you could ultimately end up making things worse. I mean, for one, it's like, you're killing a lot of innocent people. It's like, because I mean, it's even something, the dude who came up with the plan of wiping out those specific people, Jake, he was talking about the fact is maybe it's that situation of time can't be changed, that things are set in stone. Fate is, fate, that they were never supposed to be able to change the future. But, even the others are, it shows you how devoted they are to it, because the only one who was really 100% about backing down was Jake. It seemed like there might be other people there too, but the moment a gun was pulled on Jake, it's kind of like, yeah, the only way you're out of this situation is if you're out, because it's like, oh, what if you get captured and then you could jeopardize our mission too? Which is interesting too, because something Lindauer brought up at the beginning of the episode is, like, obviously Eve's the one that was kind of suggesting, like, oh, we need to wipe out those people, the 47 at the camp. But it's like, well, now she finds out her husband Paul is there, which Lindauer's kind of like, oh, don't worry, he'll be safe. Which Lindauer doesn't want to kill them. He just wants to keep them locked away, probably do what they need to do. Or if need be, just keep them there forever because of his position. But still, it is eventually going to raise a lot of questions, and eventually that situation is probably going to involve, like, well, the fact of the matter is, I guess we're just going to have to wipe out the entire town too, type of thing. It could potentially go down that route, but we don't know. But that is kind of scary to think about. The fact is that, I mean, for Eve, it's like, oh, for her, it's like, living the life that she's lived now kind of makes her realize, because at first it's like, oh, I've made this sacrifice, but I think it wasn't until she lived this life where everything was good and where she didn't have to worry about the worries that she had in the future, that it kind of made her go, like, I want to get back everything that we lost, the future we couldn't have, I want it back. And so hence why she's doing what she's doing, Because like I said, we still don't know who they were before all of this in the original time. Like I said, it seems like Eve is the main one who takes over things. Like I said, her name being Eve. Like, is that even her real name? I mean, that's what Lindauer called her. So, like I said at the time, maybe like Eve is supposed to be kind of like a play on words, because it's like, oh, she's Eve and she's come back to kind of like create Eden, essentially. Like maybe it kind of has like a biblical like underlying kind of tone to it, so. But kind of going with the whole Marshall situation, we have Jude, he's investigating Emma, but then he starts getting some people, a computer tech dude, to start looking through Emma's searches and stuff like that, and he started to figure out she was looking into certain things. And apparently she left a lot of breadcrumbs behind, because she probably knew that there was a potential that something would happen. That's why she was doing a lot of stuff off book. Like, she wasn't trying to put anything into the system, because she knew she couldn't trust Lindauer. And so probably just in case anything did happen to her, she was, she was probably trusting Jude too, so. Which, interestingly enough, Jude told Rosario everything. I was like, whoa, was not expecting that. That kind of actually caught me by surprise. And Rosario was like, you should have told me sooner. He's like, yeah, I'm sorry. But because of that and the whole Marshall story, which had Marshall's dad even kind of like turning on himself, it's like, no, I was making excuses. It's like, you weren't. Maybe you had a little bit to drink, but that's not what happened, Marshall only remembered now. I think it's just because of Hannah being nearby in this whole situation. It's bringing up memories that he kind of kept dormant. I mean, he was a kid at the time, so he probably didn't think much of it, probably hearing all these people tell him, it's like, no, your dad's fault. He got drunk, blah, 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 blah. It probably started warping his own memories of just how he perceived everything. It has been confirmed for Jude and Rosario that these are the first migration people, that they did happen, that they did pop up on that road that Marshall's mom died on, because he recognizes the dude that Reese ended up killing. So I'm very interested to find out what happens when he finally. I mean, to be fair, Lindauer was standing right beside him, but I don't know if like Marshall got a clear view of him because he could put it together. It's like, oh no, this guy was there too. So it's like, okay, so Lindauer isn't just covering things up; he's a part of everything too. So I'm curious to see what they ultimately do because they're the only two people that know the entire truth. I'm curious will they end up telling him the truth because obviously Marshall ends up talking to Hannah because Caleb gave her the phone, and so obviously he was going to leave town, but now he's staying, and I'm curious to see just how much that changes things. Him saying. Because obviously, whether or not he's going to be neck deep in this whole situation too, whether it's just going to be on his own or whether he decides to work with Jude and Rosario or not. Either way, it's going to be interesting to see what happens with that side of the story. And then there's the whole situation with Reese, which, as I guess, there's the whole Sophia thing of like Sophia's like obviously she wants to help out Leia, but it's like also there's that scientist part of it that's like, oh, what's up with you Apex? It's like, oh, I heard about you. It's like, oh, do you not feel pain? It's like, well, obviously pain would be a main motive, something that you I guess would want to keep in this advanced species, or is it something you want to remove? And then like you see Reese snap. It's like I'm not here for you to examine me and try to understand me, so. But kind of breaking down the whole Leia and Reese situation, in particular not being her mom, which she's like, I'm okay with that. Like, the fact of the matter is no judgment. The fact of the matter, biology doesn't really mean much. She's like, because she was abandoned by her mom when she was 6 months old. But Reese later on kind of points out, it's like, it's because of your heart. She knew she couldn't take care of you. It's because of your heart. She's like, excuse me? It's like, your heart. It doesn't beat like other normal people. Which we kind of already figured had to have something to do with her heart, like her whatever her story is, because when we see her the first time, she has her shirt off, and you see the markings of it look like she might have had heart surgery or something like that. So, which luckily her and Reese were able to make a cure, and Leia was perfectly fine. But then you have Sophie looking at it like, what else can it do? So that's going to start, because the whole thing is like Reese doesn't want any of her DNA left anywhere, mainly because she probably knows there's going to be people there that can hunt her, but also probably just because I'm curious where Reese stands with this whole situation, like what Apex is. Like maybe I'm sure it doesn't even cross her mind as a possibility. I mean, because do Apexes have normal lifespans or not? Like, would she live out her normal life like a human, or would she age slower than a human? Like, what's up with that? Also, it turns out apparently Apexes do have kids, because that's what I was thinking. Because I was wondering what they were, because in my mind I treated Apexes almost like they were like machines. Of like they were just born fully grown, or maybe it's like I didn't know how I really thought about Apexes. I think like in my mind they were already fully grown, like as the way they are, and they just stay kind of like that. But it's like, no, they have kids too, but their kids are very different, because she's like, the reason why Leia stood out to her is because Leia cried. Like, their kids don't cry like that, they don't sound like that. So that's what kind of activated that empathy in her, empathy probably being something that, the Apexes got rid of long ago, but it kind of hit that human instinct inside of Reese. Which also begs the question, who is she connected to? Family-wise, like obviously there's like all these different markers that are connected to Apexes, but in some shape or form, maybe someone in this present day is someone that she's connected to in the future. I doubt it, but I mean, who knows? Maybe it'll be something twisted, like Jude is actually like an ancestor of hers or something like that when it comes to the grand scheme of things. Like, I mean, he might be one of the targeted people of like something in his DNA is connected to the Apexes. Like, he might have the markers himself. So also there's a whole thing about the girl with the marking on her body. I guess that kind of fits the whole aspect of like maybe humans were more like property or cattle back in then, because I was like, is that supposed to represent her being an Apex? I mean, it seems like she's knocked out, because it seems like she was one of the people that didn't get out of the water in time, like which this is the first time they kind of shown signs of that, which is kind of interesting. That basically it seems like she's kind of in a coma because she ingested so much, salt water, because, popping up in the water like that. Also, really quickly before I finish that, I doubt she is an Apex. I feel like she was Apex, she'd be up and fine, like. This kind of seemed like it leans more towards it's just them being property, or maybe that means something else entirely, Maybe it's supposed to signify certain families or something. I don't know. I kind of lean more towards the property thing, but ultimately we're going to have to wait and see about that. A lot of interesting things went down this episode, and I'm so curious to see where all of this takes us going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I want to talk about in this episode. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and good